Trump, Greenland, and Panama Canal, okay? Look, Trump's done this before, but I can't believe, like, he's doing it again. He's going for it. I thought last time maybe he would have been encouraged to, you know, after not achieving anything in this area last time, you know, he would just try another area. But if this is how he wants to spend his 4 years trying to hearts of iron international diplomacy for the United States, that's good. That's good, honestly. If as long as it stays in the planning stages, and this is what he spends all his time doing, great. Better this than, you know, strangling the First Amendment or arresting the press or, you know, suing pollsters. He wants to be like Daddy Putin. I mean, I think some people have yet to realize how similar the argumentation is before for Russian annexation of Crimea and American annexation of the Panama Canal. I don't know if I want to open that can of worms today, but the can of worms is there. I'm going to acknowledge that it's there. It exists. I'm just acknowledging its existence. I'm just glancing in its direction.
Occurred is occurred.
Hey, Nathaniel Kemple, thank you for the $5. So much for isolationism in the Trump administration. Apparently supporting Ukraine isn't helping Americans, but blatant land grabs is. Yes, that's the argument. Are you guys surprised? Look, I never bought Trump as an isolationist. I never bought it because it wasn't hard for me to imagine that the first difficulty Trump runs into in the world stage, where another world leader does not budge because they have a significant amount of diplomatic leverage, or because it is a national security priority for them, or an ideological priority, or a combination of both at the same time, whatever it is, he would run into some issue, stub his toe on it, and then resolve that he could always just use military force. This is why I think he was asking his staff about atomic weapons. This is why there was the proposals for invasions of Venezuela, proposals for invasions of Iran, which he was showing to the press, which he didn't have the legal authority to do since it was all classified information, but he did it anyway, because Mar-a-Lago is just where you go to have a great time, including just blatant perusing of classified information. And so, for me, I remember his increase in drone strikes and then restricting the information on the data on drone strikes. I remember the Soleimani strike, which is not the type of actions that you would imagine a staunch isolationist to take when you're talking about assassinating such a high-profile general with such flimsy constitutional basis as the AUMF used to fight terrorists after 9/11, when he's a foreign general, a top general of a foreign country. He's an isolationist. He's an isolationist. He wants to put America first. But, of course, when it comes to Sheldon Adelson donation money and his deep love of Israel, all the weapons in the world and all of the diplomatic and military force in the world will be brought to bear, as we're seeing Trump threaten to open hell open in Gaza if the hostages are not released come January 20th. They should be released. I hope the hostages are released. It's just, when we talk about like Trump being an America First isolationist who's going to be reserved in the use of military force, it's not that I don't believe that he understands that the use of military force could come with political backlash or political blowback. It's just that tool in his tool belt. I think if he gets frustrated enough, he will pull it out and he will swing it. And I think that he has a track record of making the judgment to swing it on many occasions before. That would make me think that, well, even if he now has learned a lesson a little bit, he would be willing to swing it again. He supported the invasion of Iraq. He only opposed it once it started to go off the rails. But if you're president of the United States and you decide to invade a country and it just starts to go a little haywire, I guess you can pull the plug at that point, but a whole apparatus has already been put into effect. You already have soldiers in the country. You have logistics in the country. You have nurses. You have You have people manning aircraft. You have civilian contractors in the country. You've got Americans who are in the country that you're fighting in as civilians who are going to be put at risk and who are going to be doing everything they can to flee to the embassy. And so just calling it off after 5 days once it doesn't go well is okay if you're playing like Hearts of Iron or some Paradox interactive game, but it's not okay when you're talking about starting and stopping a war. And while this might sound like some, like, oh, are you crazy? Trump's just going to invade, and they'd be like, oh, I don't like this anymore, or, well, maybe I should invade again. Just back and forth. He wouldn't do that. He did it in Syria. He did it in Syria. Got called by Erdogan in the middle of the night, made the last-second, late-night decision without listening to his advisors to pull out of Syria. Then, in the morning, after the Turks had already started to open fire on American allies, and politicians got dragged out of cars and shot on the side of the streets in northeastern Syria, then he decided to go back in and then go out again. And of course, it did not just endanger an American ally, it also, of course, endangered American personnel who had multiple close calls in the area. And so, for me, I mean, I don't think the fire and fury guy is necessarily going to every time use diplomacy as his first inclination. I know he has the image of a deal maker, but he wasn't able to achieve that domestically. And the closest thing he's been able to do in achieving that internationally would be the Abraham Accords, which was something that was building up between the Saudis and the Israelis for a long period before that as well, and was assisted by many senior, experienced diplomats, which was not Donald Trump. If he just leans on, diplomats around him, that's one thing. But I mean, he is the decision maker at the end of the day. So point is, to make a long story short, I never bought the idea of Trump as the necessary isolationist peacemaker. I bought it that he did not buy into the liberal internationalist framework when it comes to international rule of law and sticking America's neck out to uphold it, or trying to hold America to account when it comes to its hypocrisies. For example, when it comes to the International Criminal Court and us not holding our own soldiers accountable, definitely with the pardons that he's given, I would not think that is the case. I do not think that in principle he is going to go over there and stick his neck out for Ukraine because he supports Ukraine's leaning towards democratic systems of governance over oligarchy, over authoritarian top-down systems. I don't think that ideological commitment is really there from Trump. But I think that's not there. In fact, I would say, like I said earlier, there's hints of the thinking on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, on the other end of the war here, when it comes to how he talks about the Panama Canal. But this is the most blatant example, and we remember it a little bit back from 2015. I mean, no more like 2017, 2018, once he got into power. But now we're hearing about military force in connection with this. Donald Trump is proposing, or at least not ruling out, we're going to use the word refuses to rule out like Politico doesn't rule out the use of military force to take back Greenland and the Panama Canal. Now, when I say take back Greenland, that's wrong. That's only for the Panama Canal. We've never had Greenland, but he believes America should have Greenland and America should have the Panama Canal. Now, he didn't rule out military force for Greenland and the Panama Canal, but don't worry, even though he's proposed, he could be technically proposing Just Cause 2 in Panama, he also did rule it out when it comes to Canada. So, thank goodness, the moderates win again. Yay, we've found compromise. But no, he still will use economic coercion in order to try to reel in the Canadians. We'll talk about that in a second. Let me just show you guys him talking about this before we talk about why he wants these places so much. What could Trump actually do, and if he's really serious?
Your staff to take these specific actions to draw plans, and can you elaborate again? You didn't rule out military coercion.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
Have you asked your staff to draw plans for acquisition? I mean, are you active?
No, we're not at that stage, but we have people. I haven't even entered office yet.
Secondly, sir, Elon Musk has drawn some criticism and a lot of attention for some of his actions and provocative statements about foreign affairs, including in Europe. Your reaction to that, is that appropriate for...
You mean where he likes people that tended to be conservative?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. The AFD tends to be conservative. Yes. Okay. So, first off, let's just get this out of the way. There is no mass movement in Greenland to become the 51st state in the Union. That's not to say that nobody would like that. That's not to say that there's nobody in Greenland who believes it. That is to say that there is no mass movement in Greenland become part of the United States. There is no big desire. There is no protest movement. There is no ballot initiative. There is no collection of democratically elected representatives that they should break with their ties as part of Denmark, as a territory of Denmark, and become part of the United States. So when he talks about them voting to do this, like there is some call from the people, he is completely manufacturing this. We might as well be saying that there is a call from the people of Tahiti to become the 51st state, that there's a call from the people of Nepal, from the people of Tibet, from the people of Iwo Jima, from the people of Oman, Saudi Arabia, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, the CAR, the Central African Republic, wherever it is, all the peoples want to be part of the United States. Wherever there is a possible important American military base, they want to be part of America. Wherever there is a major trade route, they want to be part of America. Don't we believe that the people of the Suez have always basically been like, what, people from Connecticut? They're like no different, really, when you think about it. So there's nothing there. Let me just get that out of the way. Why is he so set on this? Why is he so set on Greenland? Before we talk about the possible use of military force and or why could this actually be pursued? Is he serious? So the reason why Trump is so obsessed with Greenland, it's for, I would say, legitimate geopolitical reasons. Even if this comes off extremely silly, and the way he's chosen to pursue negotiations over Greenland's important and increasing geopolitical significance is unbelievably silly. And once again, a pie in the face of anyone who thought that Donald J. Trump would bring some amount of respectability in the office that we've lost because we have an old man in there right now. If your idea is we want somebody on the world stage that could represent us and make us look respectable because you don't like Joe Biden having old people moments around the globe, and now you've chosen this man to threaten our allies over territory that's already, generally speaking, within our sphere of allies, and in a silly manner. Haha, tricks on you, I guess. You're a fool once more. Okay, sorry. Putting that aside, Greenland has significance for a few reasons. Number one, it is a midway point between the United States and Europe that could be logistically useful. And if you are any type of transatlanticist, including like me, I am a transatlanticist, or if you're somebody who, just wants America and Europe to have a strong strategic relationship, it is useful for that purpose. That's like a first really basic one that's been true for a very long time. Now, the next two reasons, and this is really fascinating, are important only in the perspective of climate change. And these next 2 points can only be important if you accept the fact that climate change is real. If climate change isn't real, if it was a hoax, then these next 2 points would not matter whatsoever. The first point would be that Iceland has a lot of territory that, as glaciers melt and thousands upon thousands of square kilometers of glaciers melt already, territory the size of Connecticut has melted in Greenland. It's going to free up like copper mining, aluminum mining, cobalt mining, and other types of raw, rare earth minerals that are going to be useful in the technologies of the future. And the United States, having that so close to where we are in the United States, in the continental United States, and as a future occurring resource, because the more that the ice melts, the more access we're going to have to these mines. This is useful to the United States, or to the United States' allies, or to whoever controls Greenland, or is allies with whoever controls Greenland, because it would allow us more access to rare earth minerals. But reminder, this only matters if global warming is real and is actually happening. The third reason, and this is also tied to global warming, is that as the glaciers melt, it will open up more possible trade pathways in the world through the Arctic, which could possibly shorten trade routes between Europe and Asia by a factor of like 20 to 40%, saving time on transportation costs, and meaning that a lot of these shipping companies and logistics companies could save a lot of money on energy, save a lot of time on manpower hours, and also get products to the locations that they need to be faster and more effectively. And Greenland could be a passageway for these through these glaciers, through these new opened up shipping routes. And it would not only allow the United States and others to ship through Greenland, it would also, of course, be a huge economic boom for Greenland. But again, only real, only significant if you believe, again, that global warming is real and it's not all fake. So the only reason I'm continuing to push that is because Donald Trump is an avowed climate denier who believes that it's fake, and the Earth always changes in these ways, yada yada. And so I just want to keep pushing this, because these are only strategically important to the people who are whispering in Donald Trump's ear, because the people who are whispering in Donald Trump's ear have to take in the real effects of climate change on America's geopolitical position in the world. And so even if they're going to have one face for the energy companies that don't like the image that climate change gives them, or because of just Trump's continued adherence to when he's wrong about an issue, even though that's going to be their public-facing face, the policy side, they're going to have to work as if climate change is real, because it is. Okay, so that's why the United States would have a reason to want Greenland in their position, or have Greenland working with the United States in order to transport goods, logistics, or elsewise. And imagine, for example, an American military installation that could help ship logistics to Asia 40% faster in the event of a war with China. Now, I'm not like throwing this out because, this is what's going to be used for, this is going to be private. I'm just throwing out to you guys that is certainly a possibility, and this gives leverage. And when the Chinese are thinking about fighting the United States, if they're like, oh, America can now get goods to Asia 30 to 40% faster, these military armaments, and America's kind of famous for its logistics. Obviously, that could be a problem. So these are the reasons why Trump wants Greenland. These are the reasons why Trump's talking about taking Greenland. Is it realistic for Trump to take Greenland? No, and I don't think he will. I don't think he will. I don't think he will militarily. I don't think he will diplomatically. I don't think he'll do it in a box. I don't think he'll do it with a fox. I don't like green eggs and ham. I don't think he's going to do it at all. And I think, to put it bluntly, that this is a negotiating tactic from Donald Trump to try to get in the best possible position to make the country of Denmark give us a good deal when it comes to trading out of Greenland, when it comes to military installations in Greenland and using naval ports, using air bases there, as well as possible resource deals. That's what I think this is. I think this is Donald Trump viewing this through his, I'm a hard man, I'm a deal maker, I'm going to open up with this crazy proposal, and then the Danish will have to negotiate me down from this proposal, and then they'll be happy to give me their resources, their military bases, their air bases, their this, their that, because then they'll have saved the sovereignty of Greenland. And I think that's what he's moving for. Now, I think he can probably achieve this without, I think, low-key embarrassing the presidency in front of its allies, as well as bumping shoulders with allies in a way that I think is not productive. But that's what I think his plan is. And that is why I'm not particularly concerned over the idea of war actually breaking out, because Greenland did not secede to his demands. I do think that I wonder what will happen if they don't secede to his demands in some capacity, or at least give him some compromise. But I'm not particularly worried about war breaking out. But this is what I think is going on. How it will succeed, I do not know. It did not work well in the first term, but this is the second term, and there's a lot more loyalists in the room who will probably be more willing to do what he wants them to do. Let's listen to some more of what Donald Trump has to say. This has to do a lot more with Canada and the Canadians, and then after we're done with the Canadians, then we'll move over to possible Just Cause 2 in Panama. This is from Stuart Benson, a friend of mine. Other streamer, by the way. Go check him out.
President, if we were to work under the assumption that you're serious about making Canada 51st state of the United States, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstance will it ever be the 51st state.
Maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. I don't
Point, you had suggested that
Listen, I don't care what he says.
But Sir, real fast, you said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No. Economic force. Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially...
It won't be that bloody if we go and fight for Greenland or Panama, but Canada, oh, now that'd be really something. So we'll just sanction them and strangle their economy. Just these like casual throw out, like we'll annex you, we'll annex you, we'll annex you. Again, I don't think any of this is going to lead to annexations. I do think this is going to lead to Trump trying to strong arm them into favorable trade deals and give him favorable terms on a whole bunch of negotiated issues. That is what I think this is going to try to end with, what he's trying to go for. In fact, I think it's obvious in every one of these cases that's what he's doing. And I think that's part of the reason why the finance minister in Canada resigned, was because they didn't think that Trudeau was ready to deal with this type of negotiation. Not only because the deficit in Canada ended up being nearly double the size of what they presumed it to be, which puts them in a much bigger financial problem than they were before, or at least what they expected to have. But also, like, she just did not trust him to take on Trump when he tries to pull these tactics.
Drawn line.
And so now Trudeau's resigned after nearly 10 years in office.
And you take a look at what that looks like. And it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't...
So the reason he's calling him Governor Trudeau is, again, the point is Canada's going to be the 51st state. He's not only trying to use this to be like, America's big, we'll annex you, we'll take you, so give us a good deal. Which, I mean, this can only go so far. And if they call your bluff on it, what do you do? And that's going to be a problem he's going to run into eventually, because someone's going to call his bluff on it eventually. But it's also, I think, a humiliation thing. I think he gets off on it. I honestly think he gets off on it. I think he loves it.
Subsidize you if we didn't, because we give them a lot of money. We help them. As an example, we're buying icebreakers, and Canada wants to join us in the buying of icebreakers. I said, you know, we don't really want to have a partner in the buying of icebreakers. We don't need a partner. But no right. Nope. No right. Here's what we have. We have a right not to help them with their financial difficulties because we owe $36 trillion too. We're going to start knocking it out pretty fast, but we're going to be able to do it because of energy and other things. But no right. No right. But why are we supporting a country, 200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said, what would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function if we didn't take their 20% of our car market. You know, again, they send us hundreds of thousands of cars. They make a lot of money with that. They send us a lot of other things that we don't need. We don't need their cars, and we don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything. And we don't need any of it. So I said to him, well, why are we doing it? He said, I don't really know. He was unable to answer the question.
Okay, so I think, again, it's all positioning for negotiations to get the best possible deal. I mean, I think, like, for example, one area that they might want to pressure the Canadians in, and this is an area where they honestly should be pressured in, if I'm being blunt with you guys, it has to do with their military spending. The Canadians spend like 1.3% of their military GDP on military spending. The standard is supposed to be about 2%. Now, the negotiations that I'm hearing about from reports from European officials is that they might bring it up to 3.5%. You're hearing the number 5%, but that's, I think, just boogeyman to get to 3.5%. And Canada's at 1.3%. And it has not budged at all post Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, Canada has sent some aid to Ukraine, but they're certainly on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to military aid. And if there is, future crises like this, I believe Canada has to pull a larger share of the burden. Now, if they're in an economic crisis, I don't want to just abandon them. That's why I don't like the idea of, this is why I didn't like the Trump proposal of if they're not paying the 2%, the GDP of 2% standard of NATO spending, then they don't get NATO protection. Because, number one, it degrades Article 5, it makes it look like, oh, well, how much do they really care about collective defense if we're willing to put an asterisk on it? And number two, if a country enters economic crisis and they need to choose between rifles and bread for their people, being part of an alliance of over 1 billion strong should give a country the freedom to choose bread. That's my viewpoint. And so I didn't like that standard at all. I didn't like the degradation of Article 5, but the country should be spending 2%, and Canada should be spending 2%. They're a developed country. They don't have much of an excuse. And so I think this is an area where Trump might use, and I'm not a militarist. I'm just saying, Canada's really behind the standard when it comes to military spending in the rest of Europe. It's just a cold fact. And so I think this might be an angle for him to be like, look, if you don't want to be the 51st state, you got to increase your military spending because you can't just rely on Daddy America is going to be his general pitch. So there's Canada. There's Greenland. One last thing on Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. If we take Mexico as a state, by the way, I guess it's going to be Gulf of America, or are you just going to call it Gulf of America for fun? Who knows?
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
Does it really, does this matter? Does this matter? Hey, remember no tax on tips? Remember when he promised maternity leave back in 2016? Where are these things? Isn't maternity leave pro-family? Where's that pro-family policy? Where is the pro-family? Gulf of America. Gulf of America. You can do this with or without Mexico as a state. Look, why not Cuba? Why not Haiti? Well, I can imagine why he wouldn't want Haiti. But now over to Greenland, not Greenland, over to Panama. He is also saying he wants to take the Panama Canal. Now, the reason he would want the Panama Canal is, of course, the passage of ships through the Panama Canal for trade, and we have a lot of our goods and other goods in the world go through the Panama Canal, and Trump wants us to control it, or he wants at least a really strong deal. And it's not only based on the fact that there's all this trade, he also has a revanchist, nationalistic reason of, you know, during an earlier period in American history, when we controlled the Panama Canal, we had a lot of workers die constructing it to malaria and other diseases. And so Trump has injected the language of blood into it, where he said Americans bled and died for Panama. And so we bled and died for Panama, and it's important for our trade interests. It's important for our national security interests. You throw in the buzzword. We have a right to control it. It's ours. We either get the best, most favorable deal, or, as he continues to threaten, we just take it back. We either negotiate for it back, or we'll take it back with force. This is one where he's not holding back on the idea of the use of possible force for economic security. Now, look, I've been open. I think this type of language is very similar to maybe something you would hear Putin say about, like, you know, Russians bled and died to take this territory, and, you know, the strategic importance of our Black Sea port makes it an essential both for our international trade and economic security and the security interests of our national defense to have control of this area that we bled and died for. And then, again, just this type of revanchist rhetoric is nothing new. It's just a constant reminder to me that you know, that kind of it's been a long time since Jimmy Carter gave up the Panama Canal for $1, which I think was principled. I think it was the right thing to do. And the philosophy here is completely turned around on its ass, and I think it's gross. I think it's disgusting. I don't think it'll get us much anywhere. Maybe we'll be able to strong arm something out of Panama, but I do not think it'll make U.S. leadership look good. And I think it'll also spoil our image amongst the Panamanians, which could hurt us down the line if there is, for example, a change in governmental power or a shift geopolitically internationally. Point is, I don't think we should be threatening war. I think as an opening salvo in negotiations with them, or with anyone you have a slight trade dispute with. Also, of course, the Danish had said they're not going to give up Greenland. The Panamanians have said they're not going to give up Panama. And the Canadians have been open that they're not going to become the 51st state. So it's now just a question of whether they're going to get a compromise to make Trump happy. Also, this is from the same press conference where he said a lot of this stuff. And this is unrelated, but I thought very interesting, where he says that Hezbollah might have been involved in January 6th.
But that's not the way life works.
Mr. President, two questions related to each other. First, you said on your first day of office you're going to pardon January 6th defendants. Are you planning to pardon those who were charged with violent offenses?
Well, we're looking at it, and we have other people in there. And as you see, I guess 24 or 28 people came now from the FBI. That came out very quietly. Nobody reported it, but they had people in some form related to the FBI. They had 4 or 5 people that were strongly related to the FBI. We have to find out about that. We have to find out about Hezbollah. We have to find out about who exactly was in that whole thing, because people that did some bad things were not prosecuted. You know, I see it
out there
all the time, and you see it too. People that were doing some bad things weren't prosecuted, and people that didn't even walk into the building are in jail right now. So we'll be looking at the whole thing, but I'll be making major pardons, yes.
He just throws out, we need to look at Hezbollah. He just throws it out there so casually, Like it's nothing. Like as if everyone should be like, oh yeah, you know, right? You're right. Hezbollah did storm the Capitol. Hezbollah did storm the Capitol on January 6th. Like it's, you won. You won.
Burns is an immoral,
You already
morally
won.
corrupt, bankrupt man.
Hey, tornado chasing. Thanks for the resub. I appreciate that.